I never imagined that one tiny mistake could expose the biggest lie in my marriage. It wasn't a lipstick stain, a hidden phone, or a mysterious text. It was something so ordinary that I almost ignored it. And by the time I understood what I was looking at, my entire life had already changed.
My name is Daniel, and until that day, I believed I had the kind of marriage people envied. My wife Olivia and I had been together for 9 years. We weren't perfect, but we laughed often, solved problems together, and dreamed about growing old in the same little house.
We met during a volunteer event after a hurricane hit our hometown. She was handing out food, smiling through exhaustion, and somehow making everyone around her feel calmer. I fell in love with her kindness long before I noticed how beautiful she was.
Life slowly became comfortable in the best possible way. We had weekend traditions, movie nights, road trips, and silly arguments over whose turn it was to cook. Friends often joked that if any couple was going to last forever, it would be us.
Looking back now, I realize comfort can sometimes hide danger. You stop questioning routines because they feel familiar. You stop noticing small changes because you assume they're temporary. That's exactly how the truth managed to grow without me ever seeing it. The first red flag seemed harmless. Olivia suddenly became protective of her phone. She used to leave it on the kitchen counter without thinking twice, but now it was always face down, always within reach, always leaving the room with her.
When I jokingly reached for it one evening to check the weather, she snatched it back faster than I'd ever seen. She laughed afterward and blamed work emails, but something in her eyes looked less like annoyance and more like panic.
I wanted to trust her, so I convinced myself I was imagining things. Everyone deserves privacy, right? Marriage isn't ownership. That's what I kept telling myself every time that uneasy feeling settled in my stomach and refused to leave.
Then her schedule started changing. Meetings ran late, business dinners appeared without warning, weekend conferences became surprisingly common. Every explanation sounded reasonable by itself, but together they created a pattern that quietly whispered something I didn't want to believe. One Friday night, I surprised her at work with dinner from her favorite restaurant. The receptionist looked confused when I asked for Olivia. She smiled politely and said, "She left almost 3 hours ago." My heart skipped before my brain could explain it away.
When Olivia finally came home, she looked exhausted. She apologized for missing dinner and described a stressful client meeting in perfect detail. I listened carefully, nodding through every sentence, while wondering where she'd actually spent those missing hours.
I didn't accuse her. I wasn't ready to destroy our marriage over suspicion alone. Instead, I watched more closely. Every smile, every excuse, every unexpected phone call suddenly carried a weight I'd never noticed before, and the uncertainty became exhausting. Then came the mistake that changed everything. Saturday morning, Olivia asked me to mail an important envelope because she was running late. It seemed like the simplest favor in the world, something any husband would happily do without asking questions. As I grabbed the envelope from the kitchen table, another nearly identical one slid underneath it. Both had the same handwriting, the same return address, and the same expensive stationery. One was sealed. The other had accidentally been left open.
I had no intention of reading it. Honestly, I didn't. But when I picked it up, a folded photograph slipped onto the floor. Instinctively, I bent down to grab it before it got dirty, and everything inside me froze. The picture showed Olivia wrapped in another man's arms outside a beach house. They weren't standing like coworkers or casual friends. They looked comfortable, intimate, completely unaware that anyone might ever see them. The date printed in the corner was only 2 weeks old. For several minutes, I couldn't breathe. I stared at the smiling woman I'd shared nearly a decade with and realized I didn't recognize her anymore. Every memory suddenly felt uncertain, as though someone had quietly rewritten the story of my life.
The letter explained even more than the photograph. It wasn't written by Olivia. It was addressed to her from the man in the picture, thanking her for another unforgettable weekend and talking about future plans once everything settles down. There was no misunderstanding left to cling to, no innocent explanation waiting around the corner. The affair wasn't beginning. It had been happening long enough for them to make promises about a future together, while I still believed we were planning ours. I carefully placed everything back exactly as I'd found it. Then I mailed the envelope she had actually given me and drove aimlessly for hours. I wasn't deciding whether to leave. I was trying to understand how someone could become a stranger without changing their face. That night, Olivia acted exactly the same as always. She asked about my day, laughed at a television commercial, and rested her head on my shoulder. Every ordinary moment felt surreal because I now knew another man had probably seen the exact same smile.
Sleep never came. Instead, I replayed hundreds of memories, searching for the exact moment our marriage had started slipping away. Was it months ago? Years ago? Or had I simply been too blinded by love to notice reality? The next morning, I quietly hired a private investigator. I hated myself for doing it, but I needed facts instead of emotions. If I was about to destroy my marriage, I wanted certainty that could never be questioned. The evidence arrived 5 days later. Photos, videos, hotel receipts, time-stamped records. Their relationship stretched back nearly 11 months. Every late meeting, every conference, every unexpected business trip fit together like pieces of a puzzle I desperately hoped would never be completed. One detail hurt more than everything else combined. They had celebrated his birthday at the same lakeside cabin where Olivia and I had spent our honeymoon anniversary every year. She hadn't just shared herself with someone else. She had shared our memories too. I decided not to confront her immediately. Anger wanted revenge, but heartbreak wanted answers. I planned one final dinner together, hoping she'd choose honesty before I forced the truth into the open. Deep down, I still wanted the impossible. We sat across from each other in our favorite restaurant. She smiled, reached for my hand, and asked why I'd seemed distant lately. The irony almost made me laugh. Instead, I quietly slid the beach photograph across the table. Her face lost all color within seconds. She didn't deny it. She didn't even touch the picture. She simply whispered my name as tears filled her eyes, knowing that excuses no longer had anywhere to hide. For almost a minute, neither of us spoke. The silence hurt more than shouting ever could. Finally, she admitted everything. The affair had started after feeling emotionally disconnected, but somewhere along the way, she stopped knowing how to end either relationship. I asked the only question that truly mattered. Were you ever planning to tell me? She lowered her eyes and quietly answered, I don't think I ever had the courage. That sentence ended our marriage more completely than the affair itself. She apologized repeatedly, promising counseling, honesty, and anything else I needed. Months earlier, I might have believed every word, but trust isn't destroyed by one mistake. It's destroyed by hundreds of deliberate choices made while someone else keeps believing in you. I left the restaurant alone and never returned to our house that night. The hardest part wasn't losing my wife. It was accepting that the future I'd imagined had never actually existed. I had been grieving a dream, not reality. The divorce was painful, but surprisingly peaceful. There were no dramatic courtroom fights or screaming matches, just two people signing papers that officially acknowledged what our hearts already knew. Some endings arrive quietly, even when they leave the deepest scars.
Months later, I found myself smiling again, without forcing it. Therapy helped. Friends stayed close. Family reminded me that betrayal says more about the person who chooses it than the one who suffers because of it. Slowly, life felt possible again.
Sometimes people ask whether I regret discovering the truth. My answer always surprises them. No. Lies can feel comfortable, but they keep you trapped inside a life that doesn't actually belong to you. The truth may hurt, but at least it sets you free.
That simple envelope didn't destroy my marriage. It revealed that it had already been broken long before I ever noticed the cracks. And if there's one lesson I carry with me now, it's this. Trust should be given freely, but never at the cost of ignoring reality.
If this story made you think about trust, love, or second chances, remember that every choice leaves a trail, and sometimes the smallest mistake uncovers the biggest secrets. Subscribe for more unforgettable stories, because the next one might change the way you see people forever.